Good afternoon, guys, and welcome to the podcast. I've got a fantastic guest for you today coming from Connecticut, Francie Jain, and she is the founder of Terawatt, and it's a forward-thinking B2B marketplace, and it's focused on helping employers reduce employee turnover and achieve long-term success. And after talking to her, it's basically an Airbnb for coaches. So we'll talk about what it is, what she does, and the impact that she's making. And I'm really happy to have her on and to discuss it with the audience. Francie, welcome.
Hello. Thank you, Chris. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah. I know we were talking backstage, and I'm always interested in marketplaces and networks. So talk about how you created an Airbnb for executive coaching.
Yeah. So the way to think about it is I think Airbnb is just such a really good analogy because instantly people understand what I'm talking about. Because if you describe it, but the Airbnb really what it is, coaches, any kind of executive coach, wellness coach, life coach, any kind of coach. So we have some SMB coaches, all kinds of coaches. They have a market rate, same the way a doctor would have a rate or a dentist, right? There is a rate that they charge and the insurance covers part of it. And then the remainder is what the payer pays. So in the coaching space, it's similar to any other business in healthcare. It is based on supply and demand. So typically the people who have been in the business for longer, who have more degrees, more books, they have a higher rate for what they're doing. And the reason this matters is because right now, most of the places that offer coaching are offering one-on-one coaching, and they offer on a subscription basis, which makes it really affordable as a buyer. The reason they can do that is because they're way underpaying the coach their market rate. So the question is, who is willing to accept that? So just like some dollars. After 2 years, if you are a certified coach, let's say ICF-certified coach, and you've been in business for 2 years, you can command about $300 an hour for your services. Right now, BetterUp, when they hire a coach, it's not like hiring, but it's a contractor, right? But they will pay them $50 an hour for that work. And as a buyer, it's great, right? Because it's affordable, it's a subscription, you're delighted because you're not spending that much money. But the flip side is, how experienced are the coaches on the other side of that? Who is taking them up on that offer? So what I would say is that people who have a real business who are getting their rates on their own wouldn't accept that offer. So typically the people that are offered as affordable coaching coaches are people who are new, or maybe they have trouble getting new clients. So we typically don't work with those people. What we are working with is people who have their own business. If they weren't using us, they would be hiring a social media manager. They would be writing a book. They would be going on podcasts. They'd be going on TV. They have a YouTube channel. So what we're trying to do is bring leads of market rate income to people who already have a business and who already have some demand. So that's on the coaching side. And we got these coaches, we put them through background checks. I spend time with them. We do a social media check. We look at their content. And really, again, it's Airbnb because there's no one Terawatt way. We don't say, in order to do coaching appropriately, you have to do X, Y, Z. No, we're a matchmaker. Everyone has a different way of looking at it. And some people own their own content. Other people license content. Like, for instance, if you've heard of Enneagram, a lot of the coaches on our program do Enneagram assessments, but they also do 10 other kinds of assessments or 10 other kinds of content that might be licensed by somebody. So that's on the coaching side. And then on the buying side, the other two stakeholders we have are the purchaser, the buyer, the employer, and they are buying group coaching typically on behalf of their employee. And for them, it's a different discussion. And for the buyer, it's why would I offer that to my employee? And there's a ton of research in human capital showing that when an employer supports the professional development of their employees, attrition goes down and revenue goes up, like retained revenue goes up, because you're spending a lot less on replacing them, on onboarding them, and all the other things that go into play with high turnover. So we talked a little bit earlier, but my area that I love to work in is healthcare. Because in all the healthcare space, the average turnover is 20%. In all of America, the average employee turnover is 11%. So one of the things that doesn't happen in a lot of places is people don't quantify what it costs them to have what their turnover cost even is. You might have 11% at some business, but if you could get to 5, how much money would you say? What would that do for your business? And so that's the pitch related to the employer. And then to the employee, it's professional development, it's working with an expert, it's learning how to be better. And there's a ton of research just showing that professional development does lengthen the tenure of employees' time at an organization.
Interesting. And what is we can talk about different things from the buy or the sell side. And so one question I have for you is there was a really great book. It's called 0 to 1, where it's talking about how do you get these exchanges or how do you get these network effects, because you have to have both sides. And so what are the particular problems that you've had with, because like with Airbnb or Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, these you've had problems with driver supply or rider safety. What are some problems that you've had on both sides, and how have you fixed those?
Yeah, well, good question. On the coaching side, my joke is that I'm the age where people become coaches. So that's to say that I have a lot of friends for 20, 30 years who I've known. And as I was starting this, I basically ran everything by them. So like the contract we have is like coach approved. We had 50 coaches negotiate the contract. And basically everything we've done on that side is to make it be in lockstep with how coaches view the world and what they would want from someone who's providing them leads. So all of that work on the front end has been really helpful because it's semi-viral on the coaching side. We have around 100 or almost 100 coaches that have been vetted, and I've spoken to and everything. We're developing this community, but it could be 1 million or it could be 30 million. It's like endless because they love it. This is like what we're talking about, and the way we treat them is how they want to be treated. Basically, we take depending on the person, in between 10% to 20% commission. I'm matching them. So they give us their market rate and we add, typically it's 15%. We add 15% on top of that, and then we send it to the payer. So I actually don't have a lot of problems with coaches, and if they want leads, always people want more work. So that would probably be the tricky part of the coaching side. But again, because I set it up so that there's no reason for them to leave, that's how we've been able to add that. So like it doesn't cost them anything to come on the platform. We pay for the background check. They have to really meet our standards, but then once they do, they're delighted because then they're full of a group of peers. So that side's been really easy. And also I'm a student of marketplaces, so I can talk very deeply about this if you want to talk more about how and why, what are some of the decisions I've made. But basically it's to keep them there so that we can keep adding, as opposed to one drops off, we add one. Like, right, to be a marketplace, you have to keep having more supply. So that side's been fine because that was quite easy. The harder side actually is the buyer, because what we're trying to do is group coaching. So it's also a little bit different from how people think about coaching. They think about it one-on-one, personal cheerleader, kind of almost like they think about it a little bit like a therapist, like someone who's solving all your problems. Obviously, coaching is not therapy, but I always have to say, so they have to think about group coaching. And then we're like, it's not just like training and development, not really, right? Because you're like connecting with an expert who's then you're evolving and you're customizing this content for this group. So it's a little bit different, right? We're not saying, here's a sales training we have, and we do it 10 times a year and we do it for 10 years. That's not what this is. This is, we have experts, we have people with problems. Our experts are solving the problems that people have. And then ideally, we're coming back year after year to solve different problems. So the problem a little bit is the group coaching from the buyer side. Another problem is it seems expensive. And so what we try to do is talk about on a per person basis. For instance, we worked with a hospital. There ended up being 2 coaches in person for 5 hours with 40 employees. It was $30,000 was the fee for the hospital, but on a per person basis, it was less than $1,000 a person. And here's why that matters. In America, the average learning and development spend on employees is like $1,100, $1,200 a year. So I
Mm.
can guarantee you hospital workers are making multiples of the average American income. So it's way below what their sort of hit rate should be in terms of what they should be spending on professional development for this employee group. And then, so there's that A, just the actual spend. But the other thing that people really need to think about, and they have a hard time with, is the return on investment and
Mhm.
what it will do for the organization's bottom line. And so that's another side of our business that we also work on, which is like helping with prove the return on investment, doing control groups, doing surveys, and trying to really get to the bottom of like how it's affecting the organization. And if you are interested, we can also go into this incredible case study we have. But that's so I'd say like the hardest part with the whole flywheel of the marketplace is getting people to understand these unusual things we're talking about and why it would benefit them.
Mm. Yeah. And that brings up one question is the a follow-up question I have is a lot of what sort of problems or frustrations or aspirations do hospital employees have when it comes compared to other industries when they come for group coaching?
Actually, it's one of the reasons I also really healthcare is that you have this group of wildly educated people, very well trained, very knowledgeable, very smart experts, top of their usually top of their game, right? Because there just are only so many doctors, only so many nurses, only so many dentists, all this stuff. Okay, the flip side is though they've received zero management training. So they may have received training on bedside manner stuff, but there's no training on how to solve difficult problems, how to have difficult conversations, what happens when there's a conflict, what happens when there's a safety concern. Why are we still having a hierarchy in hospitals? That's a culture I might have. There are all these like questions and things are very different in hospitals that are in the rest of the world. Like if you worked at like craft, I guarantee you, I'm just making this up, but I would imagine they're spending at least $2,000 a person, at least on management training and presentation training, how to work with colleagues, how to work across, how to work down, how to work up. Like that in these big Fortune 500 companies, management training is like daily. It's very common and it's like in the DNA. And I just think that that's a big disadvantage that healthcare has that it would really help them because let's say I like the hierarchical stuff makes a lot of sense if you're in the operating room, right? It needs to be one person making decisions, otherwise it's chaos. Fine. But that ends when you walk out, you're still dealing with a bunch of humans who have opinions and ideas. And it's hard, right? It's hard to work with people who see things differently than you. And so that's what kind of life is. And there's no, I like to call it like no policeman. Like there's no like enforcer of the mores or a lot of the mores in hospitals, right? There's like different groups and they have different opinions on how things should be done. And they have a way that they work together to make it work. But if there's not great skills in negotiating problems or figuring out solutions, you could end up with a very toxic environment. And because maybe someone doesn't want to deal with somebody, so they just ignore them. And guess what? You know what that leads to is higher mistakes, lower patient happiness, or all the different metrics. I'm not saying it properly, but all the different metrics that you evaluate hospitals on. And so that's what I get so excited about because it's a huge opportunity for these groups to really do something that is a ton of research. The human capital research is out there and people just haven't really been aware of it. And I don't know, it's amidst a lot of people's radars, but there's a lot of research about the impact.
Mhm. Yeah, you described the typical healthcare organization here very perfectly. One thing that I want to talk about is because you mentioned soft skills education and management training aren't emphasized in healthcare, and it's related to burnout. And solving that can help or I guess help solve a part of the healthcare crisis problem that we have.
Yeah, so burnout's also related. And burnout, I'm sure I'm gonna mangle this, but the definition effectively is that someone feels like doing the right thing isn't working or it's being forwarded somehow, right? So that you're up against a barrier and you're getting defeated every day. And one of the things that I talk about with burnout is that we talk about it like it's a personal failing. Actually, it's a systematic failing.
Mm.
So if like a human has burnout, that's not because they couldn't handle something. It is a little bit, but it also is that there's something going on in the system that they're in that is like wrong in their brain. And they're like, this is not right. And they're fighting it. And then they're finally just, you know what, the money's not worth it. It's not worth it to do this. And it's also related. That's the same thing where you hear about like nurses who will leave a hospital for 50 cents more an hour, because at the end of the day, it's just whatever the organizational difficulties are, you need to get paid more money to deal with it emotionally. And it's like kind of that it's a little bit like two sides of the same coin. But I guess my point is that burnout also has a ton of metrics associated with it. And I was just looking at actually like a NIH study that was like 300,000 it's like interactions or nurses. Oh, no, 300,000 is it like what do you call it? Accumulated studies of 300,000 nurses. And there are all these correlations. It's like the higher the burnout, the higher rate of medicine error. The higher the burnout, the higher, the poorer the culture of safety. But all these different things happen, like the higher the burnout, like the lower the patient satisfaction score. It's related, right? It's related. And so it shows up in other places. So just because you could say, oh, we'll just get rid of that person, they have burnout, like tough noogies for them, we'll just bring in someone who's happy and peppy. Those problems still exist.
Hmm.
And so if you start to have, maybe you could say one person out of a million, okay, that's the one person's problem. But if you if it's coming up and you've got a high rate of attrition, people are leaving, like there's probably something going on where people just can't, there's some conflict in terms of what they think should be happening and what is happening.
Yeah. Yeah. And to round it out, because you mentioned on the buy side, a lot of people, when they think of coaching, they think of like individual, like kind of one-on-one, but you talk about how group coaching transforms businesses by scaling success.
Yeah. And also customizing, which is cool too, because usually if you have like someone who's in charge of this, they think, oh, God, I've got so many people, I have to make them happy. We're just going to do this one thing and everyone's going to get the same thing. But actually, there are many ways, and now, especially with AI or any kind of like organizational efficiency with automation, you can find ways to customize and make people happy and respond to their interests. And that's also a thing in employee, like, what is the word? The relationship employee satisfaction to organizational success is in that organizations who listen and react and respond to the needs of the employees. And so one of the things we like to do is send in a survey. This actually happens a few times. Someone will be talking to an employer and they'll say, okay, these people really need help with having tough conversations. Okay, cool. And then we're like, let's just do a survey and we'll ask the people and then we'll just make sure and just confirm. And often what the employees think the problem is different from what the employer thinks the problem is. And so it's really important because if you have people that are voting on different titles and they're talking about their problems and things start to pop and you realize that actually it's not having tough conversations, it's finding a way to do work-life balance. That's different, right? And then we say, oh, okay, listen, by the way, you guys all voted for work-life balance stuff and we hear you and we're going to bring in someone to help you with work-life balance. And guess what? That gets a much better, people buy into that. They're excited. They want to go. They want to learn. They're probably more likely to tell other people about how it worked. And it's when people don't want to do something, and if they're forced to do it, that's when they kind of sit there and are pissy and bring everyone down. And I think that the customizable is valuable there. And then the scalable is just that we can do it with like large groups. It's like not a problem for us. But the other thing is with scalable is the more people in an organization who are receiving support and professional development, the faster the turnover will decline.
Yeah.
And so it's if you like, for instance, like if you're working in one group and like they're doing all this stuff and they're learning so much, it's great. Like you could probably come up with incredible metrics of what's changing for that one group. But if you want it to impact the whole organization, everyone needs to be involved in that work.
Yeah. Fascinating. I really enjoyed this conversation and I think you're doing some really great work. I was just talking about with one of the coaches, speakers talking about Disney culture, and I was talking about someone that the next $1 billion idea is either someone that can just completely change the way healthcare is delivered and experienced. Really fascinating work. How can people, if there's executive coaches listening or organizations they want to sign up or find out more, how can they connect with you and reach out to you?
Yeah, the best is just reach out via our website. It's terawatt.co and it's Terawatt. Terawatt means a trillion watts of energy. I'm all over LinkedIn, both individually, personally, and then also Terawatt. Those are our best ways to connect. Yeah, and on the coaching side, we're always looking for talented people. And we don't have really a definition of what that means, but it's really just someone who's looking to help other people, who really believes it in their heart and is like also a good person. On the employer side, I think we want to talk to all people who are curious. But I especially love chatting with people that are numbers driven, because that's how we are really actually quite different from most of these kinds of human capital organizations. Because I went to business school, I did a lot with economics and accounting and finance. And to me, that's really fun. And I think like bringing the human capital, ROI, accounting stuff to this makes it more interesting. And also is like cool, because you have these coaches on the one side who are really talented at connecting with people and helping them reorient their brains, but they're not like accounting people. They're not statistics people. And that's what we do, is we make it really easy to like make the pitch and show people why this is a good investment.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. And I really enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you so much, Chris. It was a real pleasure.